Articuno is the freezing cold, feathery, legendary bird of the Kanto region. This icy rock's past in competitive has been pretty dicey to say the least, and I think it's safe to say that Articuno is considered one of the worst legendaries in all of Pokemon history. Ice is an amazing offensive typing, but being on a defensive bird makes Artie here get reverse Uno'd into a pile of yellow snow. So to save this Pokemon from the snowstorm of mediocrity, let's make Hell freeze over with a brand new ability. Whiteout will grant 2 effects to Articuno as soon as it reaches below half HP. First, Snow will activate, because it's honestly silly Articuno hasn't been given that ability before anyway. And second, the opponent will be frozen immediately after the activation of Whiteout, but the freeze will only happen once per battle. After activation, anytime Articuno swaps in and out, it will have Snow warning until it fades. Now with this new chilly ability, there will be a sub-zero chance that Articuno is anywhere less than OU for the foreseeable future. Zapdos is the jolting and bolting bird of legend, and in competitive terms, the most consistently dominant force of the bird trio. Never dipping below UU in a 28-year span, for lack of a better term, is electrifying to say the least. And like the Beast trio that I covered, it honestly already had the perfect ability in Lightning Rod from the Dream World in Gen 5. But for some reason, Zapdos got access to this hidden ability zapped away, while Articuno and Moltres kept theirs. I think to elevate this elemental avian once more, we need to give Zapdos a bold new ability to bolt back to the top of the food chain. Volt Fury will activate when Zapdos gets to 75% its HP, and will brew up electric terrain, while simultaneously paralyzing its opponent upon activation. The para will only occur once, and every time Zapdos switches back onto the field, it will be able to summon electric terrain until it faints. Now Zapdos can reclaim its position as a dominant threat, and remind the world once more that Team Instinct is still the best team from Pokemon Go. Moltres is the flying, flaming fire fowl of the bird trio, and is the main course for any Stealth Rux user pre-Gen 8. Like Articuno, Moltres' weak-type combo should be a massive hindrance to its viability in competitive Pokemon. Thanks to the advent of heavy-duty boots, Moltres is probably in the best shape it's ever been as a balanced legendary, even having the most fitting hidden ability in Flame Body, cause, well, but after living in the stormy shadow of Zapdos for all these years, Moltres needs to muster up the valor to turn up the heat with a brand new ability to stoke the flames of battle. Radiance will kick in when Moltres reaches 50% its HP. First, the opponent will be burned, and second, due to its flaming body burning brightly and brilliantly, Moltres will cause a single stage drop of accuracy. Burn will only occur once, and have its secondary effect active until it faints. So yes, Moltres will turn into a switchable, guaranteed accuracy drop. Now Moltres can make like the Weeknd and blind all its opponents by the light. Mewtwo is the main Machiavellian maestro of maliciousness in Gen 1. As the original big bad legendary of Pokemon, its status has never been questioned. It has the stats to back it up, and even into its late 20s, it's still Mew maxing with things like its Mega Form to stay in shape. Canonically speaking, in terms of Pokemon that have access to pressure, I think Mewtwo might be the best example of a legendary to have this ability. But once being the absolute pinnacle of domination in competitive Pokemon, Mewtwo is just happy to get an invite to the party these days. But to pay homage to the better days of yesteryear, Mewtwo needs a retool for the modern era with a brand new ability. Psychosis will grant Mewtwo the ability to lower the opponent's special attack by a single stage when entering the battlefield. But unlike Intimidate, Psychosis will ramp up in stage loss by another stage each time Mewtwo is swapped out and swapped back in, and will go down to 3 stages as a cap after its 3rd switch in. Now Mewtwo can cause more psychological damage to your opponent than when Netflix thought it was a good idea to remake the first Pokemon movie. Mew is the mythical master of many movesets, and is the molecular ancestor to all of Pokemon. This cat-like psychic wonder hails from the long and forgotten lands of South America. If we still live in the same world as Pokemon, then I can't wait to see the Los Angeles region. Competitively speaking, Mew was once the pinnacle of adaptability, but because of Gen 9's insane levels of power creep, Mew now has to hide under that damn truck just to avoid getting thrashed by all its descendants in OU. Now holding the title of the biggest drop-off of any legendary Pokemon, it's about time we pay respects to our elders with a brand new ability that equals its adaptive nature. Molecular will alter Mew's typing whenever it is switched onto the battlefield, and will always match the typing of its opponent. It won't change the stats or appearance like that of Imposter, or the move typing like Libero or Protean. It'll simply copy the types of whichever opponent's Pokemon is fastest. Now Mew can feel anew, since it knew that upon review of Team Preview, the enemy withdrew upon Mew's pursuit.
Oh, hell no, man. What the f, man?
You know, there really isn't any Pokemon around like Unknown. Introduced with such intrigue back in Gold and Silver with the 26 different forms of the sentient hieroglyphics, after it was even the leading cause of conflict in the third Pokemon movie, the world was waiting to see the full potential of these mysterious letters. So how could Game Freak possibly mess up the potential of this Pokemon? Pun definitely unintended, it is quite an unknown reason why this Pokemon has been treated so poorly when it has all the potential in the world. So let's make it, well, known why this Pokemon should be recognized. Alphabet will be contingent on whichever unknown of the alphabet is on the field, which makes you question and exclaim to Game Freak why they haven't done this already. Depending on the letter, that unknown's presence will automatically disable any moves of the opponent's Pokemon. So if T is out, moves like Taunt or Terra Blast can't be used until Unknown leaves the field. Obviously a very situational ability, and it also turns a regular Pokemon match into a can of Alphabet Soup. But considering Unknown's only move, Hidden Power, got canned faster than a kid with a stutter at a spelling bee,
I was gonna foot him,
Unknown can now spell misery with a whole party of 6. Suicune is a watery doggo and leader of the legendary beasts, and really the only dog of the trio. This wandering wet pupper is the only member of a minor legendary trio to get their own game, and with its prehistoric predecessor leaving a wake of destruction in competitive Pokemon as of Gen 9, Suicune has never been anything less than prominent. While this legendary has been absolutely fantastic in every generation available, it's only been 85% so. Its access to moves like Scald and Calm Mind made Crocoon a name to be feared for decades. I think the missing 15% that Suicune needs is a unique ability for this iconic good boy. So let's change that. Purify takes direct inspiration from Suicune's depiction in Pokemon Forever and Pokedex entries. This ability simply gives Suicune an immunity to being poisoned, and 50% less damage from poison-type moves, with the added benefit of being able to take away toxic spikes once it touches down on the field. However, with this new ability, it is now more difficult than ever to take down this stall juggernaut. But do I care? No. I just like the idea of Toxic not being able to corrupt such a pure doggy, and not wasting away in a puddle of dog water. Entei is a ferociously fluffy feline, and absolutely not a dog. Yep, not making this mistake again. While the popularity of Entei is quite high, it is actually the lowest ranked of the trio in terms of viability. While Fire is a universally outstanding offensive typing, coupled with Sacred Fire as a strong stab move to ensure a scorched opponent feels Entei's wrath. But like any cat, this legendary sure does cower in the presence of a little moisture. With a strong new Paradox form and Gouging Fire, Entei now just needs a strong new ability to play catch up with the rest of its resurrected kin. So let's change that. Volcanic Presence will grant Entei two different effects. For one, Eruption for Entei will always remain at max power regardless of its HP count. And second, any and all rock type and fire type moves will gain a power increase of 30%. Now when Entei enters the field, volcanoes across the world will bellow even more mighty, much like its roar. Wait, roar or bark? Raichu is a versatile, voltage-filled fur baby, and is the closest Pokemon we'll ever get to having Diego from Ice Age in-game. This thunderous tiger is often the distant member of the Beast Trio. Entei and Suicune got all the love for their appearances in Spell of the Unknown and Forever, while Raichu was taking super effective L's by kicking sand around, which is shocking, since Raichu has been just as consistent as Suicune in competitive, and even overtook its feline brethren in usage when it had access to Volt Absorb. In order to recorrect past mistakes, let's change that. Voltaic will activate upon switching into the battlefield, and simply give Raichu a 20% charge each turn before using an electric type move. Pretty much like Electromorphosis for Bellibolt, except Raichu doesn't need to wait for a silly contact move, and it can just keep charging back up after discharging a discharge at its opponent. Now Raichu can stick its head above the clouds, knowing that its ability woes are now ancient history. Oh, yeah. Moral of the story, just use Paradox Pokemon. Ho-Oh is the ever-elusive polychromatic phoenix and bringer of eternal happiness to any trainer who gazes upon it. Until the Stealth Rocks come out, then it's damnation. This rainbow bringer holds a special place in millions of trainers' hearts from its appearance in the very first episode of the anime. Ho-Oh might be a phoenix, but goddamn if it ain't built like a turkey with these kind of stats. Thanks to the heavy-duty Tims Ho-Oh rocks into battle, there isn't much of a handicap that is keeping Ho-Oh from being a dominant force anymore. Regenerator is honestly perfect for Ho-Oh, but if we want to be even more thematic to its roots, Let's change some things. Prismatic will be like a diet take on Terrestrial mechanics for Gen 9. Much like how when a single light turns into a ray through a prism, Ho-Oh's attacks will hit for neutral damage on all not very effective types. So basically all these types would get rocked harder than rocks rocked this rockin' bird. Now that Ho-Oh can indiscriminately dish out a can of whoop ass, it can now fly off into the sunset, knowing that its trail of colors mean death. Lugia is the ginormous guardian of the seas, only of course when Manaphy is out on a smoke break. Interestingly, Lugia was actually not created for Gen 2, but rather specifically for Pokemon 2000, so that's kinda neat. It's a Sea Guardian, a legendary bird wrangler, and the most infamous wall in the history of competitive Ubers. Why would I want to create a new ability for Lugia, when multi-scale is already broken enough? Well, for a supposedly powerful legendary, instead of being built like the Berlin Wall, let's come in like Ronald Reagan and tear it all down with a wrecking ball of a new ability. Stormbreaker falls in line with Pokédex entries that pertain to the true power that Lugia possesses. If Lugia lands both Rain and Tailwind will activate at once, but only for 3 turns. If you break this ability down, this might be the most broken entry yet in this series. But legendaries are meant to fly high above the rest of the Pokemon world. And why not let Lugia finally stretch its finger-licking wings to no longer slumber in rock bottom? Celebi is the titular time-traveling mythical of the Pokemon world, only said to appear during times of peace, and not appearing in the latest DLC alongside its fellow Johto legends can only tell me one thing. Well, if Celebi ever decides to come back from grabbing milk from the corner store, this onion-headed looking ass would have quite the trouble in the current generation of Scarlet and Violet. Celebi needs an equally adaptive new ability so that it can come back and be a staple of competitive forever. Eh? Time Slip would work in a singles and doubles capacity, and would allow all 2+ turn damage dealing moves dealt by allies and itself to be completed in the same turn, so basically Power Herb in ability form. And as a complement of the ability, moves like Hyper Beam and Giga Impact would no longer need a recharge time after use. This will only pertain to damage dealing moves to avoid Geomancy shenanigans from occurring. Celebi can now live in the current age of Pokemon with no worry of peace, because as soon as it touches down on the field, everyone will be long dead with the impending Hyper Beam spam. Hoenn's legendary Golem trio of Regigigas, Regirock, and Registeel will always be known as the most difficult but rewarding Pokemon to grab from the 3rd generation. Beloved by all who know Braille, such a complex quest would lead to some pretty powerful Pokemon, right? The Regi line has been absolutely shafted by lackluster abilities until the release of the comedically fast electric phenom Regieleki in the 8th generation. So to bring the original Golems back into viability, let's change some things. Regieleki and Regidrago got some really neat abilities in Transistor and Dragon's Maw that help power up the moves their elements are closely associated with. So in that same vein, Glacier, Bedrock, and Carbon Fiber, with all 3 of these really awesomely named abilities that I'm a little too proud of, would act in the same as their inspiration. Each would grant a 1.5 times boost to their respective move type, but I want to dive a little deeper. Since the 2 newest members got some cool new moves like Thunder Cage and Dragon Energy, Absolute Zero, Tectonic Shift, and Infinite Ally would all act like Tinkaton's Gigaton Hammer. Super powerful, but can't be used twice in a row. Latios is a certified iconic Pokemon in the fandom, for all the wrong reasons. Questionable reverse aside, this younger sister to Latios has been a defensive powerhouse for over 6 generations now. But in order to be faithful to its canonical powers, let's change some things. Deflection would grant a 10% evasion boost to Latios or energy-based attacks. Why only 10%? Because this ability is stupidly broken enough, given Latios' special defense is already her best stat. Based on multiple Pokédex entries in the anime stating Latios' ability to refract light to camouflage, this ability reflects actual light deflection and would be applied to any moves that have the words beam or energy in them. Now with deflection, Latios can soar through the skies above to deflect any of the shade she catches when fans mention why Latios was stalking Ash and aimed to be a Pokemon master. Latios. It's quite fitting that this legendary is known as the Eon Pokemon, because it has been an absolute terror in competitive ever since the 3rd generation. And while Levitate makes sense cause, well, but I still think the older brother to Latios deserves an even better ability, so let's change that. After Image isn't just the name of an overused technique in shonen anime, but is a fitting ability to the multiple Pokédex entries that describe this jet-like wonder. Upon switching in, Latios randomly takes on the appearance of any of the opponent's 6 or so Pokemon in their party, working like Zoroark's imposter, but it is literally an imposter among us. I guess in this case it's an imposter amongst them? Since Team Preview makes the information of each trainer's Pokemon available at all times, this ability might nerf Latios, but is that really a bad thing? In the final touch on this whole concept, this can be a hidden ability. How Kyogre's Drizzle actually works. Kyogre's eternal battle with Groudon over weather supremacy has shaped more than just the Pokemon world, but competitive singles and VGC for decades. Drizzle is a crazy ability, and very fitting for this legendary to have, but how does it actually work? Well, rain is simply evaporated water droplets that get condensed into clouds and then get released through precipitation. There, I just explained the water cycle in a single sentence. Now you can all avoid learning about it in the 3rd grade. But how is a Pokemon like Kyogre able to create this entire cycle by its simple presence? Short answer? Long answer? 2 factors must be present in order for Kyogre to have the capability to create its own rain. Kyogre must be able to produce an ungodly amount of heat with its body in order to produce enough evaporation to start the cycle. So in that case, it's basically just Groudon. Kyogre must be able to naturally produce silver iodide to help crystallize the droplets in the clouds in order to have them fall faster, or cloud seeding as it's called. These 2 factors alone don't create instant rain, but I'm sure this is still a better explanation than some silly little dance to make the rain come another day. How Groudon's ability Drought actually works. Groudon is one of, if not the best competitive Pokemon of all time, and this is all thanks to its signature ability Drought. But how does it actually work? A drought is defined as a prolonged period of time with little to no water allowed. The cause for this is lack of rain, climate change, and changes in wind patterns within the jet stream. Couple this with a depleted ozone layer, which creates an even more intense ultraviolet ray from the sun when a drought does occur. So how does this all pertain to Groudon? Well, if Groudon's drought is able to create an instant intense heat wave as soon as it comes out of a 10-year-old's Pokeball, all of these conditions would need to be met in order for drought to be even feasible. Groudon would need to emit enough heat to completely vaporize any clouds or water in the air, and move the jet streams on Earth away from the area of battle. Groudon would need to naturally produce vast amounts of carbon dioxide and CFCs to simultaneously deplete the ozone layer and stuff the surrounding area with enough greenhouse gases to create an instantaneous dry environment for 5 to 8 turns. How Rayquaza's Airlock actually works. This iconic dragon is not only the best box art legendary Pokemon, fight me, but is also the true weather god of the Pokemon world. While Kyogre and Groudon make it rain and make it dry, Rayquaza uses Airlock to keep the weather of the world in balance. But how does it actually work? Much like its mega ability Delta Stream, Airlock is just the equivalent of how the jet streams of our world operate. High-speed wind tunnels that exist in our atmosphere that are formed by cool and hot air pressure interacting with each other to create weather patterns. Rayquaza must be able to do this by flying around the Earth at such fast speeds that these wind tunnels are left in the wake of its flight pattern. This is quite literally impossible to achieve, but given this is the same universe where a pile of jello can shape itself into literally any organic life form, and a questionable human-Pokemon hybrid can create black holes. Jirachi, the Wish Pokemon. First introduced in Jirachi Wishmaker, it was the 6th Pokemon movie released all the way back in 2003. So the Wish Pokemon, starring as the Wishmaker, doesn't have an ability related to wishes. Yeah, we're gonna change that. Wishmaker would replace Serene Grace, thank God, and would give Jirachi the passive ability of activating Wish while in any Pokemon party. It would work the same way as the move does, healing you or another member for 1/2 the user's HP. The way Wishmaker would work is for every member that is in your party, that number would act as the amount of turns until Wish would activate on whichever Mon is on the field. So if you have a party of 6, it would be 6 turns, and you can do the rest of the math. If Jirachi faints, the ability would become inactive, so you better pray to the Millennium Comet that Jirachi isn't forced in. But that just might be wishful thinking. Boo! Deoxys is one of the best designed mythical Pokemon in the series, but is also one of many to be giving the underwhelming ability of Pressure. So let's change that. Mutation would give Deoxys access to all 3 of its forms, and would be decided by stat boosting moves. Drawing direct inspiration from Aegislash, Deoxys will be able to change into its 3 other forms based off any of the following moves. The form changes would last until Deoxys faints or is switched out, resetting the DNA Pokemon back to its original state. If Deoxys happens to carry 2 different stat moves together, such as Cosmic Power and Nasty Plot, Deoxys would transform into whichever move was used most recent, allowing it to mutate on a whim as long as it's on the field. 2 more changes would be given to Deoxys in order to have mutation work to its absolute pinnacle. By cutting 30 base points from normal Deoxys attack, special attack, and speed to reinvest into HP, defense, and special defense, this would give Deoxys base form more longevity in battle. And finally, if a trainer decides to bring Deoxys' not-so-signature move Psycho Boost, instead of the stat drop of special attack, it would reset back to its base form. The leg trio of Azelf, Mesprit, and Uxie are both the protectors of the Sinnoh region and holders of one of the best songs in all of Pokemon. No, like, seriously, why does this song go so hard?
good!
But even though they have this banger as their theme, Game Freak has really done this trio dirty. Why does almost every legendary in this generation either have pressure or levitate? While these three did receive a new move exclusive to them, there is a serious lack of gravitas in terms of fitting abilities for these very important Pokemon. So let's change that. Much like the elusive red chains that these non-fairy type fairies use to subdue the gods of space and time, Chain Link will only work if at least two of the trio are in your Pokemon party. When in each other's presence, the status moves these trio members know will either double or triple in effect based on how many of them are in your party. So if Mesprit uses Calm Mind, it has the potential for its special attack and defense to be raised by 2 further stages if Azelf and Uxie are alongside it, and only 1 stage further if you have 2 of the 3 present. Chain Link gives a new emphasis to trios and Pokemon working together, but also adds calculus to your next Pokemon Showdown match. Hopefully this makes the embodiments of emotion, knowledge, and willpower more powerful than the exact same urges you get when you fight to not hit your ex up at 3 AM. Dialga is the brilliant Newman of time in Pokemon, and is the clear favorite of the Creation Trio. Wait, no, not that Newman. Newman! Nah, forget it. Seriously, the Diamond Legendary got a primal form just a year after the release of Gen 4, while Palkia had to wait 17 years just to look like a freaking horse. Anyway, since time started when Dialga was born, this Legendary has had certain pressure to get rid of some pretty bad abilities it had been dealt by Big Daddy Arceus. So let's change that. Time to Store It will have 2 effects when activated. When it's at half HP, like Palkia, it will transform into its newly acquired Origin form. Second, all the opponent's moves will be granted -1 priority. Now, that secondary effect might seem useless, but in doubles, less priority can make the world of difference. What the fuck? Palkia is the shining divinity of space in the Pokemon universe, and reigns over the territory where too many rich white people love to launch questionable-looking rockets into. As my choice of Gen 4 box art legendary more than 17 years ago, Palkia will be the first of the Creation Trio that I cover, but also because in-game this Pokemon is faster, so... Another victim of the lackluster pressure, let's make like a Latios and purge this ability straight out of this... water dragon? Yeah, let's change that. As an appetizer, let's change Palkia's typing to Dragon Psychic, since I don't think this dude's a good swimmer with that kind of body. For the main course, Space Distort will change the fabric of the battlefield by changing the properties of directional-based attacks. When Palkia reaches half its HP, 2 events will occur. Inspired by Zygarde's power construct, Palkia will regain some HP by transforming into its newly acquired Origin form. And in doubles battles, all multi-directional attacks turn into single target, and vice versa with single target ones. All multi-directional attacks will occur simultaneously, unlike similar abilities like Parental Bond. But yes, in theory, that would make Population Bomb technically hit 20 times. Now a Master Chef, VGC competitors ought to make some space for my man's Palkia to let it cook. Heatran is a magma-munching, OU-stomping, ground-weakling monster of a Pokemon. As a terror of competitive OU for decades, it's quite goofy how a simple Mudslap can bring down such a Titan. Especially when you analyze magma, it's really just spicy rocks, which come out of the ground like a zit in the form of a volcano. So what original ability am I going to be conjuring up to make for an interesting but ultimately broken reimagining? I don't know. Give Heatran magma armor? Okay, fine, I'll actually try. Lava Devour would work as Earth Eater does for Ornthorn. If Heatran is hit by either fire or rock type attacks, it would heal for a quarter of its current HP. That way, it's a fitting ability for the volcano setting this legendary calls its domain, but also because I like the idea of Heatran slurping up Slugmas and Magcargos for breakfast. Regigigas is the Giga Chad of the Regi Trio, or is it Regi Quintet now? But has historically been the beta of the group with its infamous ability Slow Start, so let's change that. Simply removing Slow Start would make Regigigas an instant Ubers contender, but why not make it even more ridiculous? Consider it payback for all the years languishing and untiered. With Continental Shift, it's basically just a reverse Uno card on Slow Start. After 5 turns, the colossal Pokemon's attack and speed will be doubled. You heard me correctly. Not a 1.25 times boost, not a 1.5, double. This would create a fun scramble to deal with the impending monstrosity of a Pokemon. Another idea could be less troublesome for competitive, but also thematically appropriate, will be followed up in part 2. Check it out! Regigigas is the top don of the Regi Mafia, which consists of 5 henchmen. While one is absolutely broken, the other 4 need a bit of a kick in the arse to really excel. And what better way for that to happen than with your dad telling you why you're doing everything wrong in your life? With Creator's Will, Regigigas would create a boost in stats for any of the 5 Regis if they are in a Pokemon party with their master. As a passive ability, if Regigigas remains healthy, the other Regis would gain a 1.5 times boost to any of their strongest stats, kinda acting like or Quark Drive with a sprinkle of Victini's Victory Star. This feels like a very fitting ability to the lore of the Pokemon world, and for the legendary that towed the continents together and slapped elements together and said, I'm gonna be your daddy now. Giratina is the fallen angel of the Pokemon universe, aka Arceus' red-headed stepchild. It is said that Giratina was banished to the Distortion Realm due to its affinity for violence. However, have you seen how this Pokemon fights? Giratina is the most passive Ubersmon because it hits like a rubber chicken, but as the supposed devil of the world, Giratina needs an equally demonic new ability. So let's change that. Distortion Surge would bring the energy Giratina lived in for eons to the battlefield when it reaches below half its HP. Like the rest of the Creation Trio, the Renegade Pokemon would revert to its origin form when reaching this threshold, unleashing a sea of distortion onto the field at the same time. This field would be a new terrain and thus would have some attributes to go along with it. Ghost-type moves increase in power by 50%, Psychic-type moves are weakened, and normals can be hit by ghosts, and ghosts can be hit by normals in fighting. This might all seem a bit much, but come on. Giratina is literally supposed to be the antithesis of Arceus, so all we are doing is replacing a rubber chicken with a black hole. Cresselia is the graceful emissary of the Crescent Moon and the light side user of the Lunar Duo, but really is just Lunala before Gen 7 ever existed. The duo of Cresselia and Darkrai is one of the coolest interactions between legendaries in all of Pokemon. However, it's quite unfortunate that Cresselia has lived in the shadow of the pitch black Pokemon ever since Gen 4. While BDSP introduced new moves for the lunar Pokemon, one aspect that is still keeping Cresselia from shining even brighter is a fitting ability. So let's change that. Acting as the very antithesis to Darkrai's bad dreams, Sweet Dreams would heal any sleeping Pokemon on the field for 1/8 the user's HP. Outside of doubles and sleep claws, this ability would be quite useless, but if I have learned anything from my Jirachi video, having the ability to passively heal your entire party all at once would be even more broken than Darkrai's Dark Void was pre-nerf. Phione is the
prom night dumpster baby
of Manaphy, and is one of the first regional variants of the modern Pokemon landscape. This non-legendary byproduct of a Ditto getting a non-Freak Nasty style with Manaphy is the result of it egg hatching in an environment that Manaphy was not accustomed to, so therefore, we get the inferior version of what could have been. So I focus on the Liger equivalent of the Sea Guardians. Well, I believe that its connection with Manaphy can lend itself to an excellent opportunity to give Phione a new purpose and a unique ability, so let's change that. CPAC will activate if Phione is an ally on the field with Manaphy during a doubles battle. When fighting alongside each other, Phione will raise the defense and special defense of Manaphy by 1.5 times, acting as a switchable Eviolite. Since Manaphy is the original and far rarer to produce, it is only natural for Phione to shake what its mama gave it to protect the Sea Guardian that isn't named Lugia. Manaphy is the unobtainable guardian of the seas, only of course when Lugia is out on a smoke break. From its very own movie to being only accessible through Pokemon Ranger for at least 3 generations, everyone seems to want a piece of this mysterious seafaring mythical. Having an illustrious career in competitive singles, with access to one of the most broken setup moves of all time in Tail Glow, why would I possibly want to make Manaphy any better? I don't know.
It's not about money, it's about sending a message.
In their Pokedex entry, it is stated that Manaphy has the wondrous power to bond with any Pokemon, yet it shows this power by healing itself of status when it's a little moist outside? Yeah, let's change that. Heart Bond will be a passive ability that is active when Manaphy is alive in a Pokemon party. If a Pokemon in your party uses a healing move on itself, Heart Bond will grant the current battler a random stat boost at the same time. So if Goldango uses Recover, why not make it also get an evasion boost at the same time? Cause this stupid cereal mascot isn't broken enough already? This allows Manaphy to become the literal heart and soul of your team, much like the heart it doesn't have when Phione is sent drifting away so it doesn't have to raise a sterile disappointment. Shaman is the bringer of flowery fecundity to the fields of Sinnoh. This mythical floral Pokemon has been the quintessential definition of the grass being greener on the other side, That other side being its Sky form. While Natural Cure is a fine ability and fits pretty well with the idea of Shaman healing the wilted lands back to life with its powers, it's only natural to make like a modern legendary and let it have a stupidly strong ability. So let's change that. Grissetia Aroma would replace Serene Grace, thank God, along with Natural Cure to be swapped for the very item that creates the form change in the first place. Shaman will be able to transform from its Sky and Land forms upon use of flower-based moves, so anything of reference to seeds and leaves will do the trick. And yes, that of course includes Seed Flare. Now Shaman Land form can take the time to smell the roses in Uber, while Shaman Sky form can once again deflower its enemies with Mighty Force. Oh god, wait, no, god, dude, this was supposed to be a flower pun! Ugh. Arceus deserves better. As the Morgan Freeman of the Pokemon world, Arceus truly has everything. Its own game, its own movie, and it reigns supreme over competitive with a couple of iron hands. It's even the progenitor of this generation's man mechanic of terrestrialization. But there's just one little hiccup to the perfection Arceus has crafted. It has been completely shafted by one shiny little turtley turtle. Terapagos is the newest legendary Pokemon that will be coming to Scarlet and Violet via the Indigo Disc DLC. Very little information has been revealed about the new legendary, but it's easy to see that Arceus has been completely forgotten about when it comes to this new mechanic. Of course, being able to access all types via the same plates it has been able to carry around since Gen 4, it is simply an ancient version of Terra typing and needs some renovation. So let's change that. We will revise multi-type to fit the parameters of what is currently available in Gen 9. As a more thematic change, instead of the plates being needed to change Arceus' typing, the type can be pre-selected via in-game tablets that can appear in an ancient temple that can be found somewhere in Paldea. Sort of like how you need to change Deoxys' forms via the meteorites in Diamond and Pearl. More importantly, Judgment can now freely be changed up into any type that it terras into, because Oricorio can't be the only one to be able to abuse this Terra Blast oversight. This is a simple change, but it freely allows Arceus to rain havoc upon the unsuspecting turtle for encroaching on its unique typing territory.